Marcus was a seasoned thief, skilled and arrogant. He'd robbed dozens of homes, slipping in and out undetected. But tonight, his target was different: the abandoned Aldridge mansion, a decaying, isolated estate with a history of disappearances. Locals claimed it was haunted, that the family had vanished without a trace, and that anyone who entered was never seen again. But to Marcus, this was just a run-down mansion, rumored to be filled with antiques and valuables. Ghosts? He didn't believe in them. The thrill of treasure outweighed any stories of the supernatural. Arriving under a clouded night sky, Marcus felt the chill in the air as he approached. The mansion loomed above him, its windows dark and broken, like empty eyes watching his every move. Ignoring the prickling fear creeping into his mind, he slipped through a shattered window near the side. He landed in the grand, dust-filled entry hall. His flashlight flickered, casting strange shadows across the peeling wallpaper and faded portraits of the Aldridge family that lined the walls. Each pair of eyes seemed to follow him, their expressions twisted and harsh. As he moved deeper into the house, he noticed the stale smell, a sickly mix of iron and rot that grew stronger with every step. He shrugged it off, convincing himself it was just mildew. But then he heard it, a faint whisper from somewhere deep within the mansion. He froze, straining his ears, but the whisper faded into silence. Dismissing it, he pressed forward, even as his pulse quickened. In the grand dining room, he shone his flashlight over the table, where dust-covered silverware lay neatly arranged, as if ready for a dinner that had never happened. The chairs were pulled out, and strange, dark stains marred the fabric. As he moved closer, he felt a cold breath on the back of his neck. Spinning around, he found himself alone, yet the temperature in the room plummeted. His breath fogged in the air, and then, barely audible, came a low, raspy voice that whispered, "Welcome." His heart pounded, but he dismissed it as his mind playing tricks. He scanned the room again and found himself drawn to the fireplace, where an ornate mirror hung. His flashlight's beam reflected off it, illuminating his own face, pale and uneasy. But as he stared, his reflection began to change. His face grew gaunt, his eyes darkened, and a sinister smile twisted his mouth. Except he wasn't smiling. His reflection stared at him with hollow, mocking eyes, then mouthed the words, "You're not alone." Marcus stumbled back, bumping into the dining table, the silverware clattering to the floor. But when he looked again, his reflection was normal. Shaking, he turned away from the mirror and moved down the hall, trying to shake off the encounter. But the house felt alive, pulsing around him, every creak and groan sounding like footsteps that matched his own. As he turned a corner, he entered a library filled with antique books and strange artifacts. Dust swirled in the air as he moved through, his flashlight catching odd, unsettling shapes on the shelves. A small, cracked doll's face stared at him from one of the bookcases, its eyes painted wide in terror. As he shone his light on it, the doll's mouth opened, releasing a soft, hissing laugh. He jumped back, dropping the flashlight, the beam casting twisted shadows as it spun on the floor. Frantically, he picked it up, his hands shaking. When he looked back, the doll was just a doll again, lifeless and still. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. But then he noticed something even more disturbing. On the walls, words were scrawled in a dark, sticky substance. "Help us. Never leave. Join us." Each phrase was messier than the last, as if written in desperation. He backed out of the room, refusing to look over his shoulder, but he could feel eyes watching him. As he turned to find the main staircase, he felt a presence behind him. Whirling around, he saw a woman in a long, tattered dress at the end of the hall. Her face was half hidden in shadow, her hair a tangled mess. Her eyes were sunken, hollow, and her mouth twisted into a silent scream. She raised a hand and pointed at him, then dissolved into darkness. Panicking, Marcus turned and ran, stumbling into the main hall where the grand staircase stretched upward. But the stairs seemed longer, winding up into a darkness that felt alive. He had no choice. He climbed, his footsteps echoing as he ascended. Halfway up, he felt something grab his ankle, a cold, skeletal hand clamping down with inhuman strength. He yanked his leg free, nearly losing his balance, and scrambled up the remaining steps, his heart racing. Reaching the second floor, he was met with a long hallway filled with closed doors. As he passed each door, he heard whispers, screams, and soft weeping. One door rattled as he walked by, as if something or someone was trapped inside, trying to get out. He hurried past, but one door at the end of the hall slowly creaked open on its own, revealing a darkened room. Against his better judgment, he stepped inside, finding himself in a child's bedroom. The walls were lined with decaying toys, and an old rocking chair sat by the window, rocking slowly on its own. He felt a presence and looked over to see a small child's figure standing in the corner, her eyes blank, her mouth whispering, "Play with me?" His flashlight flickered, and for a moment the room was filled with ghostly children. Dozens of them, all pale, all staring with hollow eyes. They chanted softly, "Stay, stay, stay." In terror, Marcus backed out of the room, slamming the door shut. But as he turned, he saw that the hallway had changed. It was longer, darker, stretching into shadows that swallowed the end of the corridor. Fleeing down the stairs, he finally reached the first floor again, but the house had shifted. He stumbled into a sitting room filled with old furniture, each piece draped in white sheets. But as he crossed the room, he heard faint breathing from beneath the sheets. Suddenly, they began to move, the sheets slipping off to reveal skeletal figures sitting in each chair, their heads slowly turning to look at him. One of them raised a bony finger and pointed toward him, its mouth stretching into a grotesque grin. With a scream, Marcus bolted toward the front door. But when he threw it open, he was met with a brick wall, solid and cold. Desperate, he turned, trying to find another way out. He stumbled upon a door that led to the basement. He hesitated, but the shadows around him seemed to close in, leaving him no choice. Trembling, he descended the stairs into darkness. The basement was damp and cold, with a foul odor that clung to the air. Old, rusted chains hung from the walls, and the floor was scattered with broken, splintered wooden boxes. His flashlight illuminated a mural on the far wall, a horrifying depiction of tortured souls, their faces twisted in agony, their hands reaching out as if trying to escape the wall itself. And then he heard it, the scraping sound of chains dragging across the floor, followed by a